always great to have Shabbos Kestenbaum with us. He is a divinity student at Harvard. He's going through tough times because anti-Semitism is rampant. They need a massive education for the students and the professors and the faculty of Harvard. But he testified in Capitol Hill, and his voice is very strong. And my daughter Pammy and my son-in-law David Frisch, say he's really a strong voice, so an advocate. So thank you for joining us again.
Always a pleasure. I always say there are not many people I'd speak to at 1 a.m., but Zeb Brenner is always the exception.
Thank you. Well, you're doing a great job. You're a great voice. So first, tell us about Harvard. What's going on? The latest. There was graduation this week. What was it like? I know you tweeted about it, so tell us.
Unmitigated disaster from every level. So I guess I'll start with a couple of weeks before graduation very quickly. We had, as did Columbia and MIT and Penn, these encampments. I often joke or call them the Harvard Hamas homeless shelter. And it was for about 3 weeks an environment whereby Jews were followed on their way to class, whereby the slogans of globalize the Intifada or Intifada come to America were normalized and sang at all hours of the day. And it was a natural outcome of months of failed leadership. There was no condemnation. There was no accountability. In fact, they even drew Alan Garber, who's the interim president of Harvard and is a Jewish person. They drew him as a devil with horns and a tail, straight out of Nazi Germany. And again, no condemnation, no accountability. And that led to what was this disastrous, embarrassing, degrading commencement a couple of days ago, where you had close to 1,000 students and professors and faculty publicly interrupt graduation. They walked out in the middle, chanting about how unfair it was that some of their anti-Semitic students would be unable to walk during graduation. They held their own alternative graduation. And in fact, the venue in which they chose spoke out publicly today saying we did not give them permission to use our venue to do this, which I thought was pretty funny. And then, of course, at the Harvard Divinity School graduation itself, almost the entirety of the student body had their keffiyehs, their hats that said Harvard funds genocide. They handed Palestinian flags to the dean when they accepted their diploma. So it was...
Did he take the flags? Did he accept the
flags?
I
mean, she took them and put them down on a table. I don't think she really knew what to do with them. But I think what was deeply concerning was how ubiquitous and how mainstream this was. This was not 1 or 2 or even 5 or 6 students. This was hundreds of students. And the anti-Israel rhetoric and the anti-Semitic narrative is just so normalized and so pervasive. There are so many conflicts going on in the world, whether it's in the Congo or Darfur or Ukraine, but there's only one issue that has captured the hearts and minds of students and professors, and that is the demonization of the Jewish state. And it's incredibly concerning. I think this happened. I think this happened after I was on your show, but I planted 1,200 Israeli and American flags at Harvard Divinity School in memory of the 1,200 Jews, Muslims, and Christians slaughtered on October 7th. And forget about the Israeli flags were vandalized and the hostage posters were vandalized. The American flags were vandalized. So this is not just a Jewish issue. It's not just an Israeli issue. This is an anti-American issue. You know, I have classmates and professors who talk about taking down Western democratic liberalism and taking down the American colonialist empire and all of these buzzwords. They don't really know what they mean, but it's a deeply anti-American movement as well, and that's what makes it just so concerning.
Now, do you hear anti-Israel rhetoric from your professors or other professors in the divinity school?
Of course. I mean,
what do they say when you're in the classroom?
Yeah, the anti-Israel rhetoric, it's so normalized. So I don't think people would even classify it as anti-Israel. So I took a class last semester called Settler Colonialism, Nationalism, and Religion, the case of Israel-Palestine. And the assumption of the class, the assumption is that Israel is an illegitimate settler colonial state. I had students in the classmates, I should say, classmates in the class who quite regularly champion the idea that the treatment of Palestinians by the Israeli occupying forces is no different than the treatment of Jews by Nazi Germany. And again, an established normative narrative. There is no counter argument. There is no one on the other side. And it's just fascinating how an institution that purports to train the next generation of American politicians and thought leaders and religious leaders are so comfortable with the one narrative that is exclusively about demonizing Western liberalism and the Jewish state.
So how does that make you feel? Were you able to react? You're sitting in the classroom this year, last year, even before the current Hamas-Israel atrocities that Hamas perpetuated against Jews, and not Israelis, Jews that they went after. Were you able to speak out, or were you afraid to do so?
You know, I spoke out in a smaller capacity because just quantitatively speaking, I, of course, was outnumbered. And then academically, I'm a bit embarrassed to admit it, and I wouldn't have done it today. But of course, I changed what I wrote on my final paper to accommodate my professor's ideology. And I am not unique in that sense. That's actually quite common.
What does it mean? What did you write that to accommodate?
Yeah, I could send you my final paper, but it spoke about the religious detriments of settler colonialism and how Zionism is a victim of its own success, how it has emboldened right-wing settlers to attack Western democracy, to attack innocent Palestinians. And again, I'm embarrassed to admit that I wrote that, but I did, because I know that that's exactly what my professors wanted to hear. And sure enough, I did quite well. I got an A.
You got an A on that. Okay. Isn't that crazy? Here you are, and other students in similar situation have to write this drivel in order to get a good mark. Otherwise, you would get a bad mark.
Yeah, and let me just say it again. You know, we've spoken a lot, but I am not unique. This is very, very typical, not just at Harvard and not just at the Ivy League, but across college campuses, where Jews or Zionists know that their opinion is illegitimate, and they therefore accommodate their academic output with that reality. They accommodate the bigotry and the discrimination that their professors and their classmates have inculcated, and that reflects on their academic writings. And it's an open secret within the Jewish community.
Now, from what I've heard from you and from my daughter and son-in-law, the divinity school is worse than some of the other schools, because you have at least some people that may be normal when it comes to Israel and Jews in some of the other schools. But in the divinity school, it seems like you're the only one, or
Yeah.
the only one that has a pro-Israel point of view.
Yeah, well, I'm thankful to David and Pammy for a lot of reasons, but in particular Pammy, who she's not at the divinity school, but she takes classes at the divinity school, and is very in tune with the study of religion at Harvard. So she can validate what I'm saying, which is, yes, Harvard Divinity School is really a league unto its own.
It's a cesspool.
It's a cesspool, exactly. I would not encourage certainly any Orthodox Jew, and certainly anyone with pro-Israel sentiments, from coming here, because there's just no place for you in a very literal sense. I can count on one hand the professors and the students who are sympathetic or supportive of the right to a Jewish homeland. You know, I'm not going to say his name, but after commencement, a Jewish professor who Pammy and I know quite well, he came up to me and half jokingly but half serious said that commencement was just a level below pogrom. In the sense that the ideology was so one-sided and everyone was so confident in defaming and ridiculing the Jewish state that it becomes impossible to justify sending Jews, or again, sending Zionists or pro-Israel individuals to this institution.
Thank you for watching. If you like this content, you like our programs, please like and subscribe, as it helps the channel get these important conversations out there to a larger audience. So please become a supporter of Talk Line with Brenner by liking us, by supporting us, and telling all your friends to watch. Thank you.